Did you know that 1 out of every 3 people has at least one tattoo? That number rises to over 40% when you look at younger generations. Tattoos have become a major part of modern culture, but how much do we really know about what they do to our skin? To understand tattoos properly, we need to look at how they work, what layer of skin the ink goes into, and why our bodies don't simply remove the ink since it is technically a foreign substance. We also need to talk about what we mean when we say tattoos are permanent, since several things can cause them to fade over time. So, let us dive into the anatomy of tattoos and how this art form interacts with one of our most remarkable organs, the skin. Before we can understand tattoos, we need to understand the skin itself. The skin belongs to the integumentary system, which is made up of 3 main layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis, also known as the subcutaneous layer. Each layer has a different structure and function, and the differences between these layers determine how tattoo ink behaves inside the body. The epidermis is the outermost layer, the dermis sits beneath it, and the hypodermis is the deepest, containing fat and connective tissue. These layers are made from completely different tissue types, which is very important when we consider tattooing and how ink becomes permanent. Let's start with the epidermis. This outer layer is thin, but surprisingly complex. It's made of epithelial tissue, which is highly cellular, meaning the cells are tightly packed together in many layers. It can be up to 50 cell layers thick, but to the naked eye, it's only about 0.1 millimeters. The cells at the bottom of the epidermis constantly divide and push older cells upward. As these cells move toward the surface, they flatten out and die because they're farther from the blood supply. These dead, flat cells form a tough protective barrier that shields the body from friction, abrasion, and environmental damage. Every day, you shed over 1 million of these dead skin cells. Now, think about what this means for tattooing. Since the epidermis is constantly rearranging itself, any ink that ends up here will eventually be pushed to the surface and flake off. It takes roughly 4 weeks for a new cell at the bottom to reach the top. So any ink trapped in this layer disappears within a month. That's why the epidermis is not where we want the ink to go. The tattoo would simply fade away as your skin cells naturally shed. The real magic of tattooing happens in the layer beneath the dermis. The dermis is much thicker than the epidermis and is made of dense, irregular connective tissue. This tissue contains fibers, blood vessels, glands, and nerve endings. The cells here, called fibrocytes, produce collagen, one of the most abundant and durable proteins in the human body. Collagen fibers run in many directions, giving the skin its strength and elasticity. This dense, irregular structure provides the perfect environment for ink to settle and stay in place for years. During a tattoo, a machine equipped with needles punctures the skin 50 to 3,000 times per minute, injecting ink into the dermis. This process causes microtrauma and triggers the body's immune response. White blood cells rush to the area to repair the injury and deal with the ink, which the body recognizes as a foreign substance. The immune cells involved are mainly macrophages, specialized cells that engulf and digest invaders through a process called phagocytosis. Normally, macrophages can break down bacteria or dead tissue, but tattoo ink is different. The particles are too large and made of materials like dyes, metals, or plastics that the body cannot digest. Since macrophages can't destroy the ink, they do the next best thing: they trap and contain it. Some ink particles remain suspended in the collagen network of the dermis, while others are engulfed by macrophages and fibrocytes. The ink that becomes trapped in these cells is what gives the tattoo its color and shape. Interestingly, macrophages don't live forever. When they die, they release the ink back into the surrounding tissue, and new macrophages quickly move in to engulf it again. This constant cycle of engulfing and releasing keeps the pigment in place and is a key reason why tattoos remain visible for a lifetime. However, tattoos are not completely permanent. Over time, tattoos fade. Part of this fading occurs because some of the smaller ink particles escape during that macrophage cycle and get carried away through the lymphatic system. Studies have shown that tattoo pigment can accumulate in lymph nodes, staining them with the same color as the tattoo. Exposure to ultraviolet light also breaks down pigment molecules, causing tattoos to lighten or blur over the years. This natural fading process is slow but inevitable. The immune response during tattooing also explains why tattoos can be painful and why the skin becomes inflamed afterward. The punctures trigger swelling, redness, and sometimes slight bleeding. As the skin heals, a scab forms, which eventually flakes off, revealing the healed tattoo underneath. Proper aftercare is crucial at this stage. Keeping the tattoo clean, moisturized, and protected from sunlight reduces the risk of infection and helps preserve the color. Even though tattoo ink is a foreign substance, the body typically tolerates it well. Serious allergic reactions are rare, but can happen, especially with certain pigments. Red ink, for instance, is notorious for causing irritation because it may contain compounds like mercury sulfide or azo dyes. That's why it's essential to choose a professional tattoo artist who uses safe, high quality, and sterile materials. Infection is another risk if the equipment isn't properly sanitized. Contaminated needles can transmit bacteria or even blood-borne viruses, so reputable studios follow strict hygiene practices, using sterilized tools and fresh disposable supplies for each client. Another common tattoo concern is something known as blowout. This happens when the ink is accidentally deposited too deeply into the skin, reaching the hypodermis, the layer of fatty tissue beneath the dermis. The hypodermis is made mostly of adipose tissue, which has an oily texture. When ink enters this layer, it spreads more easily, causing the tattoo lines to blur or look smeared. Blowout is more likely in areas of the body where the skin is thinner, such as the lower legs or wrists, because the artist has less room for error. Too much pressure from the needle can push ink into the hypodermis, especially where the dermis layer is naturally shallower. Skin thickness varies across the body, which means tattoo artists must adjust their technique depending on the location. The skin on the back is thicker and offers more forgiveness, while areas like the ankle or forearm require a lighter touch. Skilled artists are trained to gauge this depth precisely so the ink stays within the dermis. Tattoos, in essence, rely on the body's balance between healing and containment. The immune system tries to isolate the pigment while the skin heals around it, sealing it inside the dermis. The result is artwork that can last for decades, though it may gradually soften and fade. Environmental factors like sun exposure, skin aging, and individual immune responses all influence how a tattoo changes over time. Despite being an ancient practice, tattooing is a fascinating example of biology meeting art. It depends on the skin's anatomy, the immune system's resilience, and the chemistry of pigments. Every tattoo tells two stories, one in ink, and one written by your body's cells as they heal and adapt. Understanding what tattoos do to the skin reminds us that they aren't just designs on the surface. They're biological collaborations between art and the human body, permanently etched into the living tissue that carries us through life.